Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 19 of Roo Hammer. G'day, mate. How are you?
Good, buddy. How you going, mate?
Oh, can't complain, mate. Can't complain. It's a nice and warm Thursday evening here for us, early evening.
Well, it's bloody hot up here, hot and humid as you would expect from southeast Queensland. So, got the aircon cranking. Has been for a while, actually. I think summer came early this year. So
yeah, it has, hasn't it? But the last week and a bit has been stifling hot. We've had some big days down here.
Well, I'll have to stop you there because our very special guest has just joined us. So let's bring him right in.
Awesome. Right on time.
Hey, Mr. Cameron George, welcome.
How are you, Cameron?
Hi, boys. How are you?
Good.
Very well, thanks. Welcome to Roo Hammer. Thanks for joining us.
That's all right. That's all right. Lovely to be here with you two legends.
Oh, cheers, mate.
I don't know if we're legends, mate. We're just two tragic Warriors fans that try and get our Warriors fix every week, mate. That's all we are.
We just love talking footy, so it's an honour to have you on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is it all going?
Yeah, no, it's going well. Yeah, we just been lucky enough to have some great chats with some people on here.
Who have you had on lately?
Last week, we were supposed to have Kevin Campion last week, but some scheduling issues. He wanted to go on at 11 o'clock in the day, and Rob and I both work, so that kind of didn't work out. Prior to that, we had Todd Payten on, which was a good chat, talking about this year in charge of the squad.
Ruben Wiki the week before that.
Yep.
Yeah, perfect.
Jazzy Savunga. Yeah.
That would have been fun.
And we found out that he does like swearing quite a bit.
I know that.
And before that, Big Mark Tukey, former legend, grand final prop. So it's great to have a chat with him, talk about the old days, the glory days of 2002.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then during the WNRL season, we were lucky. We got Georgia Hale on. We had Karina Brown, Maddie Bartlett, Hilda Peters, Kayla Peck, Brianna Clark, and Brad Donald as well. So, it was great to give the girls a bit of exposure. Chat about the.
Okay, well, I guess we know you're a busy man, and we certainly appreciate your time. So we'll get straight into it. So you took over the CEO role from Jim Doyle towards the end of 2017 season, and I guess you're a relative unknown to most of us. So please just tell us a little bit about your background and your history with rugby league.
Yeah, well, obviously I grew up in Australia in northern New South Wales, a place called Casino, and it's a town that loves their rugby league, and so I played a lot of league growing up, and then went to a boarding school and played league there as well, and went on and had a few games at what they were the old Gold Coast Seagulls back in the day. Yeah. Played a bit of footy there, and also out in Tamworth when I was out there working as well. So I lived out there for a number of years, and I worked in the horse racing industry throughout New South Wales and Queensland, and over a period of time climbed the ladder there with work, and it sort of took over my life, and ended up in New Zealand in the racing industry. And as a result, I got to know a few people, one person in particular, Eric Watson, who owned the club at the time, and he asked me to be on the board when I was the CEO at Auckland Racing Club, and from there it just sort of steamrolled forward, and found myself working alongside Jim Doyle for a little while, and then the plan was to be there for a couple of years with Jim, and then potentially take over if the opportunity arose. And as a result, Jim was only there for 3 months after I started, and got thrown into the hot seat. So, mate, that was at the end of 2017 when we had a pretty tough year. So, certainly started at rock bottom and had to find my way forward, and I've learned a lot, and I loved every minute of it, and still love every minute of it. So it's great.
It's great to hear. It's interesting. You said that 2017 season was a disappointing season on the field. When you took on the role, what were some of those immediate challenges that you faced?
Look, I think it was, it's a pretty tough period because at the back end of 2017, we, really struggled on the field, and that translates to a lot of challenges off the field, through fan interest and, just the challenges that come with not winning. And it's really important as a footy club, you win more often than you lose. And we were just really struggling at that point in time. So, when I took over, it was a real, decision time for us as a club as to which direction we wanted to go and how we're going to get there. So, for mine, it was just about getting back to the basics and being a footy club and not lose sight of what we were meant to do for our fans and partners. And, it was just peeling it right back and getting back to the basics and getting them right.
Yeah, right. Well, did you feel that there were any existing cultural problems at the club at the time?
No, I don't think it was cultural problems. Look, I honestly believe we've always had a really strong culture, and I think this year that was demonstrated. And you don't build that overnight. That's a number of years, a number of good people working hard. And I think what we may have done is just lost our way a little bit and tried to become, a big juggernaut before we could really be that juggernaut. So, as I just touched on, my focus was just getting us back to being a footy club, which meant making sure our roster was right, making sure we had the right people in the right roles, and making some tough calls to achieve that. It didn't come easy, didn't come overnight. In fact, we're still, are working through that now. And the important thing was for me is if we had to make a tough call, we made it and just moved on. And it was always and is always in the best interest of the club, not for any individual.
Yeah, I don't envy you with some of those decisions you have to make, mate.
Yeah, exactly.
That 2018 season was our best season since we made the grand final in 2011. And for the first time in the club's history, we won our first 5 games of the season. What do you think were the factors behind that massive turnaround in form so early in 2018, considering how we finished 2017?
Yeah, look, I think it was a couple of things. It was one, the messaging, which throughout the whole club was get back to hard work, make people accountable, and just do your job right. It was very simple messaging. It was very simple philosophy that we applied throughout the place. And my expectations weren't about the end of the year. It was about every week and every time we put on that jumper, every time we went to work, whether you're in the commercial department, the ticketing department, or a footy player, we did it with pride and we did it with passion. And we left no stone unturned to get it right. But it was just the start of a longer process that we've undertaken, and we're still trying to get it right. But I feel like we've got a lot of momentum now. We've got some good people involved in the club, and they're very committed and passionate, and they're prepared to make the tough calls and make people accountable around them, which is important.
Yeah, well, speaking of tough calls, the departure of Shaun Johnson was definitely one of the most polarising incidents in Warriors history. How quickly was the club able to move on from that? And do you think this had an effect going into the 2019 season?
Oh, yeah, look, Shaun's first and foremost, he's been a huge part of our club and so on. But you talk about tough calls; it's one of the toughest ones I've been involved in. But it was a club first proposition for me, and I think it was best for both parties that in the end we went our separate ways. And it takes a while to fill the void of someone like Shaun Johnson, but what it did allow us to do is start to rebalance our roster in terms of the salary cap spend, and we're starting to bear the fruits of that now. So the reality is, you're never going to change it overnight when you make a big call like that, but it does set you in the right pathway to ultimately rebalance and reset your whole salary cap and your squad roster. And I think we're really starting to see that now.
Yeah. Heading into 2020, we struggled to attract any major off-season recruits other than Wade Egan. And I know you and I had a brief conversation about this up in Newcastle at round 1. Talk us through the challenges that you face attracting Australian talent to the club.
Yeah, look, it is difficult. You're dealing with not only players that haven't been to New Zealand before, or when they have come over here, it's been very brief just to play a game of footy.
It's not always the best either, is it, mate?
No, that's right. But from my experience when talking to a player, if we just talk about the player first before we extend it to the family, is, normally a player will come over here on a plane, obviously, turn up on a Friday night, go out to Mount Smart the Saturday on a wet, cold Saturday night, out in the industrial estate, get bashed around, go back to the hotel, freezing cold, bruised, get on a plane the next day and go home. So a few things with that is, A, the weather has always been a little bit of a challenge for people, but two, they don't get to experience, Auckland.
Yep.
And the beautiful town and city it is, and the great fun you can have here. So their memory or their thinking around Auckland is never really great. But it's not until you get them over here and take them for a drive around and they get to experience the city, the culture, and the beautiful place that we live in. They don't really understand that until they get that opportunity. So to get them here to do that with their family, once you get them here, their families just fall in love with the place. And I don't think too many players come here and then leave and say that they really didn't like their time here. So, it is a bit of a challenge in that regard. And you've got to ask them to move away mostly from their families, their family support, their friends, and so on. But look, winning fixes all that. It's a reputation we're trying to build. It takes a little while to get there, but I think once you start to sign the right players and they start to, demonstrate to the wider playing group in the NRL that the Vodafone Warriors is a great club, it's a good country to live in, and so on. I think what 2020 did for us is show the people our culture, what a good club we are, how we look after everyone. And everything we do is for our families and our players, and we just want them to be successful. And I think a lot of players, coincidentally, when we went looking and talking to a lot of players, had a very different perception of us this year, and that no doubt helped us attract the players that we have signed this year, which has been great.
Yeah, well, I'd like a bit of a change of topic, but the topic I'm very interested in is jerseys. I'd love to talk jerseys. I'm a massive jersey fan, and so are a lot of the viewers. And I learned everything I know from Charlie Russ, the Jersey King. So shout out to Charlie. So we always eagerly await the release of the new merchandise every November. Although this year it's been a bit delayed, I understand. So we've been loving the teasers on social media. When can we expect to see the full range of merchandise and jerseys?
Monday.
Ooh. That's exciting.
Get ready. Ready. Yeah, look, I know the club's always worn it in the neck around the jumpers, number of jumpers and so forth. But with our partnership with Canterbury, they've always been very ambitious and creative, and the club for many, many years has been very proactive around releasing a number of jumpers for different reasons. So, look, it is what it is. We have a lot of great kit, and over the years we've seen some good ones and some pretty interesting ones and some appalling ones. So, but the one thing that every jumper has that we can all be proud of is that badge of the Warriors on our chest, and that's what we play for at the end of the day, regardless of the colours and what the jumper looks like.
Yeah, exactly right. I just want to say it's fantastic that we've returned to our traditional colours as well, the blue, red, white, and green, because I know for a while there it was looking like we were going to pick and stick with the black and white and the red sort of colouring, but it sort of means a lot to us supporters for us to go back to our history and our heritage and what it means to be like the Warriors. Like this jersey here screams Warriors, and that's our heritage. So it's been awesome to go back to those colours and back to our roots.
Yeah. Look, the feedback's been really, that way inclined, where the red, green, blue, and white, and so on is a real favourite of everyone. And when you walk around the ground, I love it when you see the old DB Bitter jumper. The proud people that are wearing that at the games, 20 25 years old and they're still wearing it. You know, it's got more beer and bourbon on it than anything. And it's like a bar towel, but it's great. You know, I love that. And so now to bring those colours back over the last season or two, it's I think it's been really refreshing for our fans.
Shout out to those people that can still fit in their jerseys from 25 years ago too, because I know I can't.
Yes.
A bit bigger fit back then, the big cotton ones.
What is the process behind the jersey and merchandise designs, Cameron? Is it a collaborative effort between the club and Canterbury?
Yeah, look, to a part, it is. You know, we as a club, we put our preference and any ideas that we have forward, then we work in a collaborative way. But you know, they are in the business of retail sportswear and retail, just general clothing, and so they do have a good feel for what the market want and so on. But you know, they're forever conscious of what our fan base want and so on. But they're also creative and want to be a little bit different. And you never know, if you create something that could sell really well. It's beneficial to everyone. But I'd like to think most times they've got it right. But obviously we've copped it in the neck a few times for a few of the jumpers that have come out. But they've been a great partner of ours, and we always work closely with them about the creation of jumpers.
Yeah.
Well, as I said, we're big jersey and merchandise fans here on Roo Hammer. So, mate, feel free to send us any gear that you want us to review or promote. You know, just throwing it out there.
Well, sure.
Awesome. Thanks. The speech that you gave to the players and the staff before the 2020 season obviously was made public. So what was the motivation behind this? And I guess, were you tired of the constant criticism of the club in the media?
Look, it wasn't preempted, to be honest. There was some very key points that I wanted to get across to our club, which is not unusual. We quite often we've got a catch up tomorrow with all the players and the club staff, which is an all-in meeting, and you know we do that throughout the year. But at the start of the year, it's important we set the tone for what our expectations are for both staff and players, and we try and create an environment that's really hungry for success. And when you start talking about that, whether you're a fan like you guys or whether it's me as not only a fan but an employee of the club, sometimes the emotion takes over. And I did, the day before I got a little bit pissed off, if you like, with some of the commentary around, the jumper that we put up, that we released, which was that, yellow and black one. And
the bush shirt. Yeah.
The bush shirt. And, I was just a little bit offended by it. And I felt, there's a lot of people out there that don't know our club that are pushing it around a bit in the media and using whatever platforms they want to take the piss out of us. And, that started to come out as I was talking to players about and the staff about having our backs to the wall at some stage, somewhere along the line, we will be doing it tough. And I didn't want us to rely on an outside influence to get us out of that challenge. And I wanted to, send a message to our staff and players that we will be in the trenches. And all I want for us is to lock arms with ourselves and walk out of the trenches together. Don't push someone out on their own. Let's stick together in tough times. And, let's really take it back to the people that were criticising us. And that's when I touched on, we even put a jumper up during the week and they just hammered us. And, I was not only offended by it, but I was emotional, the fact that it was taking the piss out of us as people and in the club. And I wanted our players and staff to know that when times are tough, the only people that can pull us out are the people in this room right now. And yes, my emotion took over. Do I regret it? I regret the fact that it got leaked out and pushed out in the public place and so on. But I'm just a passionate person that likes to lead by example. And then when I look back at what happened this year, I think that messaging really resonated with actually the challenges we had in front of us. And our players did stick together and our staff did stick together, and we were in the trenches.
Yeah.
And they did lock arms together, and it was a message that I think we lived out throughout the year, and that's full credit to everyone involved in the club and our fans.
Yeah.
Mate, living in Australia, we hear the shit talk from the Australian media all the time about the Warriors. I don't know if it gets back to you guys back in New Zealand, but being Aussie-based Warriors supporters can be a nightmare at times, because I just feel that we just don't get given a fair crack by the media. We're always everyone's picked for the wooden spoon. You know, a couple of times last season and this season, they'll do reviews of the weekend games and they totally miss the Warriors game. It's like it's not important enough to even discuss. So
well, they only focus on the opposition and how bad the opposition were, as opposed to us playing well. Like that happened so many times in 2020. It was ridiculous. So
having our CEO have a speech that he did leaked, showing how much passion he's got for our club. Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad it shows, you know, our fans get to see just how passionate the staff at the Warriors are about the Warriors. You know,
mate, look, we live it, we breathe it, we eat it, we sleep on it, like you guys. And all we want to do is win. And there's 15 clubs every year that don't win the competition. Yeah. And unfortunately for us, we've been one of those 15 for 26, 27 years. So we need to change that. And to do that, we need to, you know, develop a real hard-nosed attitude and not read it, but actually change it. And we want to recreate our future. We want to recreate the perception of our club. And you know, this year I think was a step in the right direction. You know, I know our players and staff are also very disappointed we didn't make the 8, even though the circumstances were what they were. But I look back on 2020 now as a lesson in life, not necessarily an excuse for what we didn't do. Yep. And you know, that's going to be my messaging to the staff tomorrow: is who learnt from it, and only the best will come out of it. So we've got to build on what we created this year, and we've got a lot more, I think, fans in Australia now. I think our perception's been sort of turned a little bit, but it's going to be reliant upon what we do this year in order for us to take that to another level.
Absolutely. Talking about the 2020 season, I was there in Newcastle for that round 1 match, as you know. We had Josh up there chatting to the boys beforehand. And
how powerful was that?
Yeah, I know. I had tears in my eyes. And
it didn't work, though. It didn't work, remember?
I know it didn't work. I was just going to say that. And I thank you for the access you gave us, because, you know, initially it was, you know, just Josh going to be up there, but, you know, you allowed all the 4 of us that were with him to be involved in what he was saying to the boys, and that was something pretty special. Just tell us, because that round 1 game in Newcastle was probably where COVID really started getting spoken about. And I know that you were getting phone calls back and forth to New Zealand and so forth. Can you tell us, or tell, you know, the people that are listening, what actually was going on behind the scenes whilst the boys were out there playing that game that day?
Yeah, it was like it was yesterday, unfortunately. And not the Josh speech. That was, no. I'd love to hear that day in, day out. It was amazing. I was, after we finished chatting in the down in the reception, and I jumped in the taxi and went to the footy ground. It was pouring down rain. It was, you know, it was a shit day for a number of reasons. But I had a phone call from someone that sort of gave me a bit of a tip off that things in New Zealand was simmering pretty badly about the borders. And so I rang someone that I knew was involved in the government, who put me on to another person, and no, they assured me that you know, everything was okay and don't worry about anything. And this was about, I think, 1 o'clock in the afternoon or 12 o'clock in the afternoon. And I thought, oh, well, that's all right. And I was more worried about the game the following week, because we had the double header with the Blues playing Brumbies.
That's right, yeah.
And I was more worried about the tickets we were trying to sell to the event. I thought that might stop the crowd. So after that assurance, I turned up at, you know, the Newcastle Stadium and strolled in and just dropped my bag off in the change rooms and sat out and watched the Canterbury Cup team. And the boys were warming up, and I got a phone call again from that same person in New Zealand, and they said to me, oh, listen, things are starting to change quite rapidly here. I'll keep you in the loop, but when are you guys coming home? And they started asking some really, you know, serious questions. And By about 30 minutes into the game, I was down in the change rooms just taking phone call after phone call after phone call for not only the government of New Zealand, but also the Nrl were awake to it then as well. And I just kept it to myself while the game was being played. Obviously, I didn't want to sort of say anything to the coaches or anything like that. And then after the game, I pulled Mark Robinson was with me and Steve Kearney aside. I said, boys, there's a bit of trouble here. And they didn't appreciate what was going on because it all blew up in the space of 2 hours. And then I explained to Stephen and Mark the situation, and the NRL wanted to see us that night back in Sydney, and it looked like the borders were going to be shut pretty quick. So it all become a bit of a panic mode, and then it broke in the media and all this sort of thing. And I had to go to the press conference with Steve, and by the time we finished that press conference, it really hit me in the face as this is quite serious. So I jumped on the bus with Mooks, and we drove back to Sydney. And I got back to Sydney, and Todd Greenberg met us at the hotel straight away. We told the players after the game. Poor buggers, their heads dropped straight away. They'd just been beaten, but also potentially being told they weren't able to go home. So by the time we got back to the hotel, it was pretty well set and buried that the borders were shutting at 5 o'clock the next day or something. So we had a group meeting, and the players decided they wanted to stay on. And, that was the point where they went up to the Gold Coast and then played Canberra there the following week because we couldn't come home. Me and Peter Hiku and Patrick Herbert flew back first thing in the morning to beat the curfew. It was important I was back here for obvious reasons, and those boys had Pet just had a baby. I think Patrick was
expecting,
was about to have a baby, or one or the other. So it just all erupted in the space of when we was having a coffee in the reception area between 12 o'clock and 5 o'clock. It was just the whole world had turned, and it hasn't been the same since.
No, it hasn't. It hasn't.
So it was tough. But anyway, when you're dealing with good people like we had in our group, it was pretty easy. It was easier to deal with than doing it on your own.
The after round two, that the season went into that forced hiatus, and New Zealand had much stricter lockdown protocols in place than we did here in Australia. Can you tell us what went on behind the scenes at the club in terms of training and team meetings and communications during that? I think it was a 10-week break, wasn't it, that the season had?
Yeah. So the next big question for us between round one and round two was whether or not we were going to stay indefinitely in Australia, because as it stood at that point in time, to your point you just made, New Zealand were well ahead in terms of their lockdown. First, it was the borders, and then a week later, it was the level 4 lockdown where we went into lockdown for 6 weeks or whatever it was. And our players were stuck on the Gold Coast, and they were deciding whether they committed to remaining in the NRL indefinitely or they were to come home. So the first thing we had to deal with was what the players wanted to do and the club wanted to do. We either stayed in the competition or we jeopardised our spot by coming home. The players committed to staying. They were just going to stay indefinitely. But then the competition got suspended because things in Australia started to ramp up. And at that point, obviously, we could get our players straight home. And when they landed, we went straight into lockdown. So in a nutshell, our players were in a restrictive lifestyle from mid-March this year to when they got out of quarantine, when they got back in mid-October. So they lived a lot of time in a restricted lifestyle. But when we went into lockdown, you couldn't do anything. The players were all in their own little households, and you couldn't train, you couldn't do anything. You could only do stuff at home in their own backyard. Not everyone had a backyard. Some guys live in units, and everyone had different circumstances. So it was really tough. We're doing all this stuff online, Zooms, and the likes. And, then Peter Volandi's come out and announced that the competition was starting on the 28th of May. And that was, I think it was about the 9th or 10th of April. So therefore you worked your way back. At that point in time, I had no idea how we're going to be in the competition. And then day in, day night, we, the amount of communication, the amount of Zoom calls, the amount of discussions, the amount of negotiations we did with players, staff, Nrl, government agencies, not only federal agencies, both in New Zealand and Australia, but state agencies. And then how were we going to get to Australia because the borders were shut? Where we were going to go and train because you weren't allowed to train in a group scenario. You had to do hotel isolation. So we had a blank canvas and everyone was just passing the ball to someone else. So it was a really tough 4 weeks for the players and staff. And we left on the 3rd of May. And I got an email at 6 o'clock on the Saturday morning on the 2nd of May to say we'd been given exemption to go in Australia. So it wasn't until the day before we knew we could go.
Wow.
So it was just an absolute mess.
Yep.
But we got there. And once the boys got to Australia, they were pretty good because they all went into quarantine in Tamworth.
Yep.
But then the next biggest challenge was the families. We'll promise that the families will get access. And then they got declined. And then it became another pretty big challenge for everyone. But look, at the end of the day, we got through it despite all the challenges, and that was due to the good leadership of a lot of people over there.
What kind of talks did you have with Peter V'landys and the Project Apollo sort of over the break as well?
Oh, mate, every day, like because we were their focus. Because so without us, how it works, without us, their broadcasting deal was in jeopardy because as the broadcasters pay a lot of money, but they pay a lot of money to have 8 games every weekend at whatever the time slots are. We all know they are. So if we couldn't be in Australia, that meant they only had 7 games in the buy. So that would have enabled the broadcasters to renegotiate their financial position and so on and so on. And it would have thrown the whole competition into doubt because of the buys and stuff. So every day, probably 3 or 4 times a day, we're either phone calls, Zoom calls, conference calls, whatever you want to call them, just negotiating, discussing, working with the government, and just waiting for approvals. It was just for 3 weeks, we were just full on 24/7. And then once I hung up from them, I had to re-communicate all that down through the playing group, through the staff group. We had to make decisions. We could only take certain people. We could only take an exact number. And then the worst thing was when we did decide we were all going, we were planning on going to Lennox Head up in the North Coast.
Yep.
They have a big training base up there. And so we all agreed that was the place we're going to go, which was for our 2-week quarantine. And then that got pulled from underneath us for various reasons about, I think it was about a week before we were due to leave. So we had nowhere to go. And I was sitting, it was about 10 o'clock at night when I got the phone call to say that Lennox Head's now off the table and they had 5 days to go to try and get these blokes somewhere in Australia. And they said to me, being the government, said that you have to find somewhere where you can land a plane from New Zealand and that you can then get direct access to a training facility that's barricaded or isolated from the rest of the world, basically.
Yep.
And I'm thinking, well, mate, we can't go to Sydney.
Yes.
Oh, this is great. It's 10 o'clock at night. I'll just ring my old mate from New South Wales who's got an airport in his backyard. We'll just land there. Like, hello. So don't forget we're flying internationally. So I rang a mate of mine who, by the name of Kevin Anderson, champion member for Parliament. He's the Tamworth member for Parliament. And I rang him. I said, Kev, I've got a problem. He said, what's wrong? I said, told him the story. I said, obviously I've spent time at Tamworth. I said, I'd love to see whether we could come to West Lees Club. You got the hotel there, you got the club there, you got the ground there, and it's all shut. So he said, mate, let's do it. So within 5 minutes, we had the CEO of the West Leagues Club on the phone with us. And about half an hour after that, we had the bloke that ran the Tamworth Airport on the phone with us. And he was telling me the length of the runway, the depth of the tarmac, everything like that. No idea. And to be honest, I had no interest. And so the space of about 3 hours, I thought, hang on, 1:30 was my last phone call. I remember it clearly. 1:30 was my last phone call that night. And I went to bed thinking, you know what, I think we might have found this. We might have sorted it out. But the biggest problem was getting the plane into Tamworth.
Yeah.
So we had to create an international airport. It'd be like flying from Sydney into Wanganui, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So then the next day I had a phone call from the Deputy Prime Minister of Australia to say he supported us and he'd love to see us get over here and he'll do whatever he can to help us. And it happened. We landed an international flight to Tamworth. It's never happened before. Mind you, we had to change the plane at the last minute because of the weight of the plane was too heavy for the tarmac. So it was everything that could have gone wrong went wrong.
It's amazing. Like just to hear you tell like the struggles that the club had to go through before they even left New Zealand to get to Australia is just it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, like to just say, we want to land. You got to find an airport and a training facility in the same town in country New South Wales. Like you just can't do it.
No.
But on due to Kevin Anderson and Rod Lang at West Leagues, mate, we were able to pull it off in the space of about 4 hours. And then we just had to work with the government about getting that access to fly the plane in. And then, our great partners, Air New Zealand, we had to pull the plug on them because their planes are too
big,
too heavy.
Yep.
We had to send freight over 3 days before on another plane. And anyway, we got there and we got tagged the Tamworth Warriors.
Can I don't know if you can answer this or not. Does the NRL foot the bill for all of this, like the accommodation and the travel and what have you, and
yeah,
to stay?
No, they did. They deserve a lot of credit for that. No, but the thing is, the model of our club just got ripped apart because we only make money by selling.
Yep.
So all of a sudden we had no home games to sell at. So our revenue just dried up. We still had our overheads in terms of staffing and so on. But without the NRL, mate, we wouldn't have survived this year. And without, the assistance of Mark Robinson and our owners, we just had to find a way and we just cut costs and, we lent on the government like everybody else here in New Zealand did. And we're able to, just sort of manage our way through it and come out the other end. And, we're grateful for all that financial support because we were the team that saved the competition. And without us, it would have cost the game millions and millions and millions of dollars. So it was worth the investment for the game to get us there.
So the team's based in Australia, obviously, and you're just talking about no home games. How did that impact on New Zealand-based memberships, for instance, and also the engagements with our sponsors? Because obviously, home game days is obviously sponsor engagements and so forth as well. And these are people that are putting money into the club. How did that all get offset with the fact that there was nothing happening in New Zealand for the Warriors this year?
Yeah, it was early on. It wasn't too bad because everybody was led to believe COVID was only going to be here for a month or two, and then the Trans-Tasman bubble will open and we'll be back. And as Rogers famously said, he said to his partner Ashley that it's all right, darling, I'll be back in a month. This thing will just blow over. And to be fair, that sort of was our hope, and that was what we're doing. And then after about a month, it started to become a reality that, we're probably there for the long haul. And so we just rolled over all of our members to next year. We just said, forget about this year. If you want your money back, if you want your money back, we'll give you your money back. Fingers crossed, we're like, please don't. But we'll roll you over to this year. So those members have been, rolled over into 2021. From a sponsor's perspective, they're all measured and they all have different tangible benefits. And as you said, some are game day related, some are branding related. Providing we're on TV, a lot of our major partners were being satisfied that their brand was still, getting the exposure and the recognition, and ticking the boxes. It was the guys that were reliant upon our games being here and engaging with our fan base on game days and doing activations. They're the ones that, could have walked away, but to the credit of our great family of sponsors, they all stuck by us. They were having their own challenges, but they all stuck with us. And we worked through it together, which was really great.
Yeah. The decision to terminate Mooks's contract after the Rabbitohs loss was a surprise for most of us. Obviously, it was a decision not made lightly. The circumstances for yourself must have been difficult. And I know these tough decisions and tough conversations are probably something you'd prefer to do face-to-face and not over a Zoom meeting.
Yeah. Wasn't even a Zoom meeting, unfortunately. Yeah, look, I don't care what anyone says. These decisions, whether you're in person or not in person or whatever it be, are never easy to make, particularly when they're good people like Steve is. And, we're in such a results-driven environment. So there's never the right time to make these calls. But when we looked at the calendar, the time of the year we're at, we, being Mark and myself and Rob Krug, we're looking at 2021. We had to make sure that we're setting ourselves up and not being short-sighted. And so the timing of it was more so about giving us a chance to find a suitable replacement, and therefore allowing us to recruit going to 21 and giving ourselves the best shot of preparing the best we can. The other option was to leave Mooks there for the rest of the year, but that's not our style. The reality is a decision was made, and it was only fair on everybody that was known. Now, I would love to have sat down with Mooks, and I say that on the basis of, it's just more my style and more professional that you do it that way. But under the circumstances, it just wasn't. We just couldn't do it that way. Even if I decided to go and do that, I had to do 2 weeks, but then I couldn't get into the bubble because you weren't allowed into the bubble of the Nrl team and so on. So I wouldn't have got access to him. But I don't think there's ever a good way or right way of doing it. But in the circumstances, it was the only way we could do it, unfortunately. And that's life, and that's what happened.
It was well reported that there was some unrest amongst the playing group, and not from that decision. I'm talking about in regards to the extended stay that we're having in Australia. They were having in Australia. The fact that they were told their families could come, and then that was being delayed or not happening. And then obviously Ken Fuss, Lavaha Pulu, Ignatius Parsi, and King went home. Now that the season is over, can you reveal, was there a contingency plan in place if more than half the team had decided, that's it, I want to come home?
Oh, that wasn't the case. Look, the boys were doing it tough without a shadow of a doubt, and so they should have been. It was, there's no blueprint or manual to deal with what we had to deal with. In your lives, my life, let alone working with a bunch of footy players and staff in another country. So I think a lot of it was reported incorrectly on the basis that as soon as the guys knew that the families couldn't come over, they all had their individual circumstances. And when those 4 asked for permission to come back, my word to them was, when we left to go over, if the families couldn't come, you can come home. That was my promise, and we held that right till the end, until they come home. But the other guys, the only guy that was left without his family was Roger in the end. All the Australian eligible players, when I say eligible, being they're from Australia or they held residency or they had a passport or something like that, their families did go over. So a lot of the staff were the ones that were struggling the most because they didn't have families. The only staff member that had family there was Todd. and everyone else missed out for various reasons, and they were the ones doing it the toughest. And I think some stages of players held them up.
Yep.
And I wouldn't have thought many players would have decided to come home. The only 4 that I was really aware of were the guys that did come home.
Yep.
There were certainly days where the guys were really down and doing it tough, but they just stuck together and worked through it. But thankfully, they did so because they had a bit of fun towards the back end of the year, and I think they really did enjoy it in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. The mid-season search for a coach is never easy, and it seemed that every former first grade coach without a current job was being linked to the club in the media. So how difficult was the interview process during the COVID-affected period, considering prospective coaches couldn't view the club's facilities?
Yeah, it was challenging, but it was probably the norm at that stage. Everyone was doing everything by Zoom. There was nights we're sitting here, we'd have interviews every sort of Monday, Wednesday night for about 4 weeks straight. And there was Rob, Mark, Simon Mannering and myself. We would interview the applicant. And look, mate, they were all very good in their own way. Everyone brought something different to the table. And we're looking for something a little bit unique at certain times. But at the end of the day, we could have potentially chosen 2 or 3 coaches, and we were settled on Brownie, and I couldn't be any happier. He sort of ticked a real package of boxes, and where other guys were more particular in certain areas. So I think there's a real synergy with Brownie, certainly myself and Mark and a lot of the staff at the club, because he spent a bit of time here. So he understood the culture and he understood the environment, but equally he understood where he could help and improve it. And he's a real coach. So we're very happy with that. But, as you touched on, it wasn't easy, and everyone, give me the shit. You pick up the paper and there's so many reports of people being linked to the club and offered jobs and so on. That was a disappointing thing, but I mean, that's what happens.
Yeah.
Josh was hopeful that he'd get the call.
Well, I'm surprised. I'm actually interested because for the previous 12, or what I've been there 2 seasons, I don't know, I would have had 10,000 people tell me what's wrong with the team, and we only had like 20 applicants. So I'm surprised you blokes didn't have you in that hat in the ring as a dual coaching unit.
Well, we were thinking about it, but I've just got too much on my plate at the moment, mate.
That's all right. Next time.
Next.
Brownie was obviously very good at Newcastle with identifying pathways and developing the younger talent that he had there, and also improving the senior players. Is that probably what attracted you to signing him to our club?
Yeah, absolutely. There's probably 2 parts. I thought he's exceptional with his communication manner and how he goes about that. He's got a really engaging personality in terms of how he talks to the players, the staff. He's one of them, and he sort of leads from within. It's quite an interesting leadership style he has got, and I think it's really suitable to our environment. He's not a loud headbanger or anything like that. He doesn't kick chairs, and not that I know of, but he's got a really good engaging manner. That's the personality of him and the leadership style, which I think is really suitable. And then I agree with you. I think what he did at Newcastle was, I thought, very, very good. It was very strategic. He took a club from 2 or 3 wooden spoons to, build a roster. And what a lot of people don't understand is you can't just walk into a club and change your roster. Guys are on contract for 2 years, 3 years. So you've got to sort of buy into that and coach them out of it into a better team. Or when you get the chance to sign someone else that's going to add value to your squad, that's what you do. And, I particularly remember going through Brownie's history and looking at, what he did in the UK was very impressive. He built teams that won games and won championships. And what he did at Newcastle, it's not necessarily the results that he got when he was there, but it's the results that they're getting now. That that squad was pretty well built when he was there. So, not to say we're in a rebuilding stage, but he's a good coach, and I think the young kids we had coming through, he's going to really help them. And then, with his influence, you just got to look at the signings we've got between him and Sully. They know their footy, they talk footy, they don't stop talking footy, and they're a really formidable pair that I think are going to take this club to a special place.
Yeah, we're definitely excited about what's ahead for sure. 2021. But back to the 2020 season, from round 11 onwards, the team really seemed to play with a level of resilience that we really haven't seen in a Warriors squad for a long time. So, what are your thoughts of how the squad handled the adversities that they faced?
Outstanding. I think one guy I want to give a lot of credit to is Justin Morgan. So Morgs was coaching. He's got a lot of he's got a lot of skill at coaching. He came over a few years ago, and then things didn't work out, and he remained in New Zealand. And I got to know Justin away from footy quite well, and I had the opportunity to bring him back into the fray to coach the Canterbury Cup team, and he did so. And then obviously that went by the way this year, and then as things unfolded, through Mook's sort of moving on, he got elevated. And I genuinely believe between him and Stacey and Tony Iro, the way in which they took on the adversity and coached the players and changed a lot of things, I reckon it was a catalyst to the results we got. So Todd was certainly someone that led that, but these guys were the foot soldiers around there that actually really put in the time and effort. So with all that rolled into one, you then ask the players to buy into it. They certainly bought into it. I think once they realised that they were there for the long haul, they settled into the rhythm of, what they had to do, and they just got on with it and said, well, we either stay here and win, or we can stay here and mope. And they had a crack at trying to win every time they went out there, which was great.
I think that, as you said earlier, I think that the attitude that they showed this year is one of the things that has attracted guys to the club. This has probably been the most active the club's been in the player market for some time, for a long time that I can remember. And we've got some big name players in, Ben Murdoch-Masila, Adam Fanua-Blake, Ewan Aitken, Kane Evans, Bailey Sirinen, Marcelo Montoya, Sean O'Sullivan. It must be satisfying feeling when these guys agree to terms and put the pen to paper, finally.
Oh, yeah, mate. Yeah. Because we've been doing this. We've been having Zooms with them. So Sully's really big on making sure we all meet, we all get on, and we all have the same view. So when you're sitting here talking to Adam Fanua-Blake, and we always encourage them to bring their partner or wife on the Zoom with us, and you got Brownie, Peter O'Sullivan. He's quite amazing, to be fair. I hope he's not ever watching this, but he's been there for 2 years, and I thought, this bloke's just taking the piss, like he's not doing anything, but he's a real thinker, and he's a real studier of the person, a real studier of the team. And Nathan Brown told me a long time ago, he said, wherever Sully goes, look at the squads he's built. And I looked at Melbourne, I looked at the Roosters. I said, well, when's our turn? And all he was doing from when he could, and it goes back to my point about the roster, you can't just change it overnight. When he could, he just tweak it a bit, or he would bring in a player that you think, this bloke's not right. He goes, but he mightn't be right in your eyes, but what he'll do is make the other three players around him play better. So it's not just signing the player for the sake of getting that player here. It's making sure we get that player, not only is going to add value, but he also complements the other players.
Case in point, Jack Murchie.
Correct. And, there's all a strategy in Sully's mind about that. And dare I say it, he's taught me a little bit about patience in rugby league and how to build a squad and how to just not go and sign someone. Because I'd see a name come up and go, mate, go and sign Johnny.
Yeah.
He goes, we don't need Johnny. I said, of course we need Johnny. He goes, no, we've got one Johnny. He's just got to play better. And so, you know, they're amazing thinkers, those rugby league experts. And this year, when he had the chance, he's nailed it. He hasn't had the spots in the roster to do it. But this year, when you're sitting down with him, he goes, right, I've got this bloke. Let's talk to him tonight, 7 o'clock. And that'd be it. I'd only get 3 hours notice or 2 hours notice. And he just knows why we need that player, not just for the spot, but to make the other players better.
The one that surprised me was, not surprising as in the fact that we went after him, but surprised me that there was no talk that we were actually talking to him. But has excited me the most is Bailey Sirenen. I'm very excited to see him in our squad.
Well, you know, it goes back to, and again, this is how you learn to work with people, and I'm appreciating it more and more. Sully's not a big talker, so he'd rather not tell you something than tell you, because he doesn't want it to get out. And he's not that he doesn't trust you. He just thinks, well, if it doesn't work, if it doesn't come off, I haven't told him and he hasn't got excited about it in the club, someone else found out and so on. He just plays his cards close to his chest, gives you about 2 hours notice for a Zoom call. Away you go. And Bailey Sirenen, case in point. Now, the opportunity came up. All of a sudden, we're sitting on a Zoom with him, his father, Paul Sirenen, and Bailey, and his manager, and Brownie, myself, and Sully. And you know, just all the talk was really good. And Brownie explained how, you know, he can help balance the team out and fill a void that he thinks we had, and so on. And it's all part of the process, not trying to, you don't want to let the cat out of the bag. You just do it professionally. You respect the parties involved, and that's how we try and approach it.
Yeah.
He's a good kid. He's a good player. He's had a big year, and he'll add a lot of versatility. You know, he's a bit like that Luke Capewell type player. He can play in the centres. He can play six. He can play in the back row. You know, he's a good kid and comes from a really good family, as you know.
I used to see him play junior footy quite a bit, and he was an age group above my middle son. So, I used to, being a Sirenen, and everyone knew who he was. So, you know, I used to watch him when he was younger, and, you know, he was a 5'8" back then. So he's a bigger boy now and plays in that back row, but, you know, has a good dimension to his game, I think. Yeah.
I think the key for us this year is the depth and the competition we have in a number of spots. You know, over the last couple of years, we've probably been a bit shallow in our depth. And if we lost one or two, there wasn't too many left on the bench. But, you know, I think the strategy around the squad we've got now is, and the balance that we've got is, if you look at Rogers' game in 2019, 2020, the amount of meters and the amount of power runs he had to take, because we didn't have the bodies or the big bodies there to take the power. So, you know, if we were to paint a picture of a very healthy squad, and you look at our top 13 being on the park, and you look at, you know, Adam Fanua-Blake taking the hit up off the back fence off a kickoff. You know, you've got Torhu, you've got, you know, Kenny coming in from the wing, you've got Fuss the other wing. Roger isn't doing the hard work there and there. So what it's done, this is going to improve Roger's game no end, because once we get into the attacking area of the field, Roger's going to be energized like a bunny, and he's going to be all over the place. Those power runs aren't required. So if everyone's doing their job, it should be a completely well-balanced, powerful team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We're pre-season underway now, and we've got our squad in split between Auckland and Kiama. Mm-hmm. At what point will the squad come together as one, and will that be in New Zealand or will it be in Australia?
Watch this space.
Okay.
Look, we need to get them together sooner rather than later. We've done what we've done because we wanted to minimise the isolation, obviously, issue that we had if players were coming back here. So first and foremost, all of our new signings couldn't come to New Zealand because they're not deemed as residents, so they couldn't get exemption. So we hit a big hurdle there. We tried to sought a quarantine facility like the Wallabies did when they come over here, but that was declined. So we need to get our players together after Christmas ASAP. So, yeah, look, we're pretty sure the borders aren't going to change, so we're making a decision over the next day or so.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, we spoke to Jazz a few weeks ago, and he was saying that the season will be kind of divided into 3-month blocks, which will be assessed depending on lockdown restrictions and international borders being open. Is this still the case?
Yeah. So our plan is, and what we've tried to do is be proactive in planning certainty in a very uncertain time, if that makes sense. So this year we were very reactive and we're just on the hop. There was no planning. There was just do what you had to do to survive in the circumstances. So the best thing that we did was settle on 3-month blocks. So January through to April. If we have to go to Australia, which seems to be the most likely case, we go. Now, if the borders open up in that period of time, we're not rushing back. We're not coming back. We're going to stay for that 3-month block. So what that does is allow us to manage our team and keep them stable, keep the families understanding what's going on, because the families can come with us to Australia now because we can get in. So that's the biggest stress relief in the world. Yeah. It allows the families to come, know that they're there for 3 months. And let's just use January through to April as an example. If the borders open up in late Feb, the players, the families, we all know we're staying to April 3, 4, after round 4 or something. And then if the borders are still open, we'll come home. Now, if the borders open up tonight, obviously we'll make a decision not to go, but we've got to decide pretty quickly over the next 24, 48 hours what we're doing. So as I said, watch your space. Yep. So what that enables the players to do, if they've got kids that want to put into school, we've done it to the school terms, run it in line with school terms.
Okay.
So it allows them to put their children into school in Australia for a term and not take them out halfway through a term. Yep. And then if we get to that April point and the borders aren't open, we commit to the next 3 months. So the players know, we all know, our fans know, and we can sell tickets to games over there. We can sell memberships for 3 months. We can try and manage it that way, where if we don't have those time blocks in place, all the players and staff and family will be one eye on the news on TV and one eye on the paper, and they'll be listening to all this stuff swirling around. Well, if we lock into it, you Aussie blokes, based guys will know that we're playing our first 3 games in Australia or 4 games, and you can get into it.
We'll be there. We'll be there.
We will.
And the other thing is, you can open the borders any day, but they can shut pretty quick too.
Yeah, that's right.
You've got to have confidence that we're not going to get trapped coming home. You need them to be open for a while to get good confidence that they're going to stay open.
Yeah, because the NRL released a draw last week, and it's got the Warriors with home games at Mount Smart.
Yeah.
But based on what you're saying now, unless the borders open this side of Christmas, that's really not a realistic option for the start of the season next year.
Nah, I don't. I honestly believe, we've got a meeting in the morning. I honestly believe we'll be making a decision and announcing pretty quick what we're doing. And it's in the best interests of our players, our staff, their families, and our fans. And we've had no insight into the borders opening. And I would have thought that if the government were going to open the borders before Christmas to allow all that Christmas travel to occur, there would have been some announcement by now in order to allow people to plan themselves.
That's right. Yeah.
Half the planes aren't even here anyway. They're going to need time to get everything going again.
Can you tell us where the team is likely to be based in Australia next year? Is it going to be back around Terrigal, or are you looking?
Or how about Queensland somewhere?
To the north, towards where Rob lives up in Queensland.
Redcliffe.
It's a really good question, and there are, we've got a partnership with Redcliffe, and the boys really enjoyed Terrigal. No. I think what we need to do is as much as what I'll say is we need to de-risk our situation as best we can. And, to get into Australia is one thing, and the last thing you want to do is get trapped in a state. because the borders only opened up, this week to Queensland.
Yeah.
And I see there's a case or two in Sydney now, and I just read that Western Australia are looking at potentially shutting their borders if any more happen. And so we've got to be very conscious of not only being in Australia to be out of the risky sort of environment. We don't want to then go and be in a state potentially where we could get locked out of New South Wales or vice versa. So look, I think in the manner in which the guys, the players, have given us their feedback around the Central Coast, it's probably the favourite at this stage.
Love hearing that. Sorry, Rob, but
I just have my fingers crossed for Redcliffe. That's all right. I'm sure there'll be some games up here anyway.
Oh, for sure. Well, we're looking at playing a trial there in February against Melbourne. So
at Redcliffe?
Yeah, Redcliffe.
Yeah,
so
okay, I'm there.
Providing the borders allow it all to happen.
Yep.
They're a great partner of ours, Redcliffe, and we intend doing a lot with them. It's just we can't really take the risk of interstate borders at this point in time.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Completely understandable. The club did release a $10 Warriors supporter offer in October, which $5 from each purchase going to Junior Rugby League. And in November, the club released the first membership packages for the 2021 season and the 2021 fan pass. So how have those memberships been tracking?
It's been interesting but challenging at the same time. One is really have appreciated the support, particularly that $10 one, which was just a lot of our fans now that we have in Tamworth and the Central Coast all jumped on because it supported their local league, and obviously Redcliffe people and so on. But also there's a lot of people sitting back waiting to see where we're going and what we're doing.
Yeah.
To be honest, why would you buy a membership over here at the moment if you're not sure whether we're going to have games here? They can buy a $10 one or a $20 one or a $39 one just to be a part of our club. But anything that's relative to game day, I think everyone's just waiting to see what our decision is, and then they can work around that. But there's a shitload of support out there, and they all want to get on board. They're just sort of working out which is the best way forward, as we are.
Yeah. I probably on that then, if based in Australia, will there be, like, I know we've always done the away membership through the club, but will there be like a home supporter package at the Central Coast or something like that the club would look at trying to introduce?
It just depends on. So the problem we have is the indefinite period.
Yeah.
So I think we can develop something that allows the members get a discounted ticket and or a window of buying before the public.
Which is what we had this year, which was good. Yeah.
And I think that's probably the fairest way of going forward. Otherwise, if I go and get X amount of dollars off you for a 5-game membership, and after 3 of those we come back to New Zealand, we've touched up for 2 games. So
personally, mate, it wouldn't bother me, but yeah.
No, I know that. We appreciate that. I'll remember that. But it is something that we're very conscious of. We don't want to have people pay for something we can't deliver. So, given our circumstances, unlike other Sydney clubs, it's a bit tough. But that's why we're just really keen to have a low cost membership that allows those members to get access to tickets before anyone else and be a part of our club and get the communications and so on.
What have you got planned if the borders don't open and the team's based in Australia on these 3-month blocks that we're talking about? What have you got planned for the New Zealand-based members? Would you have game day experiences at Mount Smart Stadium next year and that kind of thing? Because you wouldn't have been able to do this year. No,
see, we would love to have done stuff this year. We were able to do one. We did one membership function. It was great. We played Cronulla that day and got pumped on the Central Coast.
Oh, I was at that game. I was at that game.
And the problem was, and was during the year, that was the first time we were allowed to have more than 100 people together.
Yep.
So New Zealand, like Australia, had all those restrictions in place, so we couldn't get the members together. we're looking at now is if we aren't home in the first couple of games, is I'd love to have, subject to the stadium, obviously he's got to approve this, but I'd love to have like a picnic on Mount Smart Stadium and watch it on the big screen.
Yep.
Imagine sitting on the grass, watching it on the big screen, having all of our members and fans come along to that. So there's options that we want to engage with, and we can this year because there's no restrictions on numbers at this point.
That'd be good.
Yeah. Just regarding sponsorship, so midway through the year, there was that media report about Telstra exercising its exclusivity right as a major sponsor and putting uncertainty on the Vodafone sponsorship that we've had for 22 years. Can you enlighten us on what's happening with that?
Oh yeah, look, it's it was that they obviously wanted to invoke that clause on the competition, which obviously had effect on Vodafone. Look, and I understand Telstra's position on that, but I also was very defensive on our position of protecting Vodafone as a long-term partner, not only of the Warriors but the game in general. They put a lot of money into into our club, which flows on to other benefits of the rugby league community in New Zealand. And look, we actually accepted in the end, after a lot of headbutting of the NRL, we actually accepted the position. We said, rightio, fine. So we advised Vodafone of the situation, and to their credit, they were so professional, and they were devastated, but they were professional, and that's just them. That's how they operate. They're just a passionate brand that conduct themselves professionally all the time. And then word got out that through Vodafone, well, they've got 3,000 people there, so they tell people we're not sponsoring the Vodafone anymore. And then this social media sort of surge just went, and it got into the press in Australia. And then lo and behold, 2 days later, 24 hours later, we had the CEO of the NRL ringing us to say Telstra have reviewed their position and they're allowing Vodafone to continue with their partnership with us, which we're greatly appreciative of. But it was certainly, I think we all underestimated how much the Warriors meant to a lot of rugby league people, and it felt to them that we were being kicked again while we're doing so much for the game. It couldn't have happened at a worse time.
Yeah, it was just the timing of it, wasn't it? Terrible timing.
Yeah, but I've got to say, to the credit of Jason Paris at Vodafone, he was so professional, and his staff, Andrew Abdo and the Telstra people. In the end, when we sorted it all out and everything was right and back on, I think that everyone handled it well in the end. I think we all underestimated, the power of our brand at that point in time.
What is our sponsorship deal with them? Like, have we got 1 year left with them, or two? We got 2 years.
No, there's another 2 years. So very excited about that. Obviously got DTR. We've got an announcement on Monday of a new sponsor, which will feature on our jumper next year. We've got Mazda, Wendy's.
Roo Hammer.
Is it, mate?
Have you sent your check over?
We'll get something organised, mate. Don't worry. We'll try and get a package together for you.
That's it. But we've had Wendy's extended their deal the other day for next year and beyond. Unilever, Best Foods, they're a massive brand. They love being involved. They've extended the end of 23. So we're commercially very well supported, not only by our kit sponsors, but all of our other partners as well.
What about Canterbury? How long is the merchandise and deal with Canterbury?
Yeah, so we're just working through that as we speak, and we should be making an announcement soon.
Okay, sure. We'll watch this space.
Yeah, another watch this space.
Yeah.
We won't keep you for too much longer, mate, because we know it's late in New Zealand, and we really appreciate how candid you've been with your responses tonight. I'm a massive supporter of the women's game and, of course, our Warriors women's team. This year was obviously a difficult season, only having 5 girls volunteer to come over and play due to the COVID restrictions and so forth. And many of our girls couldn't commit due to work and family and so forth. 4 weeks probably just wasn't enough time for the 2020 squad to come together and gel.
Yeah.
Do you think the NRLW should extend the season to incorporate 2 rounds or even expand teams to have more teams playing?
Yeah, they've got to do something. Honestly, this is the 3rd year we just had, I think. Yep. Of the same 4 teams. The NRL need to do something because I think we're just plateaued out at the moment. And it's not fair on the girls because they're really great athletes and footy players, and just to have 4 games isn't really enough, to keep them really interested in the competition and so on. So the important thing is that they might have to expand it with another couple of teams. I reckon it's about time we created, some more teams in the competition. And then you can obviously, by virtue of that, you're going to expand the length of the competition by another couple of weeks. I think having other teams in the comp will start to have a better flow through for other young girls wanting to play in the game. Because at the moment, it's pretty tough to break through. And it's 4 teams.
It's a weird setup too, because like I know last year the Warriors girls got to play a home game at Mount Smart when they hosted the Dragons there, but usually it's a game that happens as a curtain raiser to a semi-final game where apart from the opening game in 2018, our Warriors girls haven't played before our Warriors men, so to speak. So you don't really get the true home fans or the true fans of the club being there to watch those girls play.
No. I have my own view on the format of the competition. Like I'd actually put it at the start of the year.
Yeah.
I'd actually make, if you ran it at the pre-season into the season for 4 or 5 weeks, and really make it a key element to your season starting. Where at the back end of the year, everyone's, if their teams are out, you're not watching the footy as closely. So you're not really going to take an interest in the NRLW because you're not watching the semi-final, to your point, and so on. Where at the start of the year, everyone thinks they're going to win the comp.
Yeah.
So you're up watching every bit of footy. Everyone's starved for footy.
Yep.
Everyone wants to see some games. I think there's a sort of niche period there that we as a rugby league sport could really own, because it's sort of a bit of a no man's period. You're coming off the back of summer, and you could really own that space and get some good coverage too, I would have thought. But that's only my view. There's smarter people than me over there running the show. So
that's pretty innovative. And then, they could maybe have the grand final of the NRLW on Magic Round or something like that,
Correct. Yeah. And then you flow on, and then your origins after that, and so on and so on. And then your rep rounds are after that as well. So at the moment they're playing all their rep footy, and then they're going into the season. So I'd reverse it myself.
Oh, sorry. Go on.
Sorry, mate. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask a lot, just on the women's game. Like, a lot of people have been asking about the jersey, and is there ever any plan to release the women's jersey for sale?
Yeah. Look, it's all about a cost.
It's understandable.
With how many you're going to sell and so on. But I think as time goes on and they get a bigger and bigger following and they become more successful, our team, I think that's something that, our apparel partners, Canterbury, will look at. So, but I think it just comes down to your cost first,
It's understandable.
Yeah. We won't keep you too much longer, mate. I'm just going to scroll because I've got my live feed's going off. There's so many questions on here.
Is that all your family just sending you things, mate?
He's onto us.
No, mate, no, there is people on here. Richard Morgan's sending me quite a few things to ask you. I'm just going through now to see what I can ask and what I can't ask.
Just a quick filter.
Okay, so,
Just bear with us.
Yeah. Question for Cameron: how are the new signings tracking along in pre-season in Australia?
Yeah, really good. So I was talking to Adam Fanua Blake earlier. He's going really well. He's impressed me immensely just with his leadership that I've seen on some of the Zoom calls. He's a good leader in the making for sure. Ewan Aiken turned up this week and apparently blitzed them in all parts of their training. Wade Egan, they tell me, he's flying. Jermaine Tanua-Brown's going well. And there was one other the boys are really wrapped in. Joshy Curran's going extremely well.
Oh, good.
So they've come back in really good shape. I'm talking about the guys based in Australia.
Yep.
And then
Great.
the boys over here, Jack Murchie's going great over there as well. And the boys over here, we've got a lot of young kids here. And the feedback I'm getting about them and what I've seen and listened to has been very impressive. I've liked the way Sully's just handpicked a number of these young kids coming through. Their different body shapes, they're fast, they're strong, and I've been really impressed with their leadership qualities, which is great for young 17, 18-year-old kids coming through.
Yeah. Just a question. So at the moment, our 30-man squad has been released, and we're sitting at 30 players in that 30-man squad.
Mm-hmm.
But we've got players on train and trial contracts, I guess you'd call them. So what happens there if they get picked up on a contract? Are they then classed as a development player, or do we have to release someone from the 30-man squad to accommodate another player from a train and trial contract? How does that work, Cameron?
It's two parts. One is so you identify, any number of guys you want to put on the train and trial just to get them into your system, get a look at them, let them get a look at us, and so on and so on. And then if you have a development spot or two available, you might elevate one of those from train and trial into that. So if we use Jermaine Tanua-Brown as an example, last year, he came to us on a train and trial. Sully found him in the Queensland Cup and brought him over for a couple of weeks, and he impressed. And then in the end, he got we had a couple of spots left in our top 30, and bang, he got a spot right down the bottom, and he played 20 odd games this year. Played in the All-Stars game and so on. So it's depending on your spots, but if there's a couple of development spots, mainly they go into those roles. Not everyone gets a chance like Jermaine.
Yep.
Or what happens, with our partnership with Redcliffe, normally we'd have the Canterbury Cup team, you put them into that. But with Redcliffe, we can send them there for the year with the view of, if they develop well over the year with our partners in Redcliffe, well, there could be an opportunity for them next year. It's all a bit of a step-by-step approach to a longer-term strategy.
Yeah.
Here's a question from Rich, mate. He wants to know, are there any plans for membership and fan engagements for the Aussie-based fans in 2021?
Plenty.
Yeah.
Tell him I'll let him know very soon when he knows what we're doing and where we're going.
There you go, Rich. You hear that, mate?
Awesome.
You'll be told very soon, or I'll get the good oil from Cam and I'll pass it on to you. Has the club been approached by any Australian-based companies regarding sponsorship opportunities for those potential 3-month blocks?
At this point in time, I wouldn't say we've been approached by. We've had a few phone calls and working through a few of those options now. But with Vodafone and Mazda and a lot of our brands, they are trans-Tasman.
Yep.
So you sort of just expand that relationship into the Australian market. So there's some opportunities through our existing brands to do some work in Australia with them. But outside of that, we certainly have some brands that have reached out to, just inquire about what and if there are any options available for our game days and so on if we are here.
Okay. And Phil Gould, I saw there was a picture of him at Kiama chatting with Justin Morgan. The
Jeez,
other
you
day.
don't miss anything, you boys.
Nah, we're all over
We
it.
are Warriors fanatics.
Fingers on the pulse, always.
Yeah. What's his role going to be leading into 2021 with the club?
So how it all come about with Gus, I've had a view for a long time. Like, there's people that think they know about rugby league and they think they know how to fix rugby league, and I'm one of them. I think I do.
I don't know. You did a pretty good job.
I reckon there's only a handful of people that actually know what they're doing in rugby league. And Gus Gould is one of those in my mind. And I rang through this whole thing that we had to work through. Mark and Rob and I just worked day and night together, consulting each other, communicating, talking, all sorts of things. And I just felt that we needed someone in our club that we could lean on just to get if we wanted to ask a question about footy, if we wanted to understand what's in place in other clubs and so on and so on. If we wanted to sort of pick his brain whether we're on the right track or not, it's just a sounding board. So when I spoke to Mark and Rob, I said, why don't we see if someone like Phil Gould would like to come on as a consultant to the club, not just the footy department, to the club, because he knows an awful lot about running footy clubs, not just coaching footy teams. And where he's been, they've been successful in the years thereafter because he's built them up from scratch. And there's no greater example than Penrith. And then before that was the Roosters. And then, his record speaks for himself in coaching. So I just rang him out of the blue one day, and he's got a real strong interest in development, and had a bit of a chat to him. Mark, Rob and I had a Zoom call with him, and he was really impressive. And so for us, we can learn off one of the best the game's ever seen, and one of the greatest minds and knowledgeable minds. And his role with us is just pure consultancy. He's someone that he's really passionate about our club now. And he takes so much time out of his day to go down to Kiama, for example, not for anything other than just to be there to support people.
Yep.
And to offer his advice if you're asking him. He doesn't just turn up and say, do A, B, and C, and D. He's really respectful the way he goes about his business. I talk to him a lot. I just love listening to his dulcet tones and telling him I pick his brains. He pick his brains. I feel like he's calling a Channel 9 game to me while I'm talking to him. And he's a bloody good bloke, and he's only going to help our club get better. And the one thing that he is going to focus on for us moving forward is getting all the development stuff underneath better.
Yeah, you only have to look at the success Penrith have had. He was there for a long time, putting all that into place, and they're now reaping the benefits of that with their
local communities. Yeah.
And he's desperately wanting to be over here. He's even thinking about doing 2 weeks isolation just to come over here and spend time on the ground and get a feel. But I talked him out of that. But that's the attitude he's got. He just wants to help make us better, and he's got a real passion for that particular area of development.
Yeah.
That's the area that if we get right, it just snowballs into success long term. So he's a champion bloke. You wait till you blokes meet him. He'll come to a game and he'd rather go and sit with you blokes and eat a pie with tomato sauce and sit up in the box. And he's not like that.
Lock it in.
We are the Brains Trust.
Yeah.
He's just a really. I've been super impressed with the way he just I didn't even know he was going to Kiama, and he rang me on the way. He sent me a text message and said, "Mate, just been to Kiama. I'm going to go back next week. Boys are looking good. They're talking well. They're this, they're this, they're this." Just his observations.
Yep.
And all those coaches now know they can ring Gus and, "Hey, mate, what do you think of this?"
Yeah, that's awesome.
And he sent me a message the other day. Oh, mate, it was mind blowing. after the Super League grand final
Oh yeah.
about the lessons that he wanted us as a club to learn out of what happened in that last minute of the grand final.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it was amazing where he touched on the fact that those winging guys will never watch that game again because they know they didn't do their job properly.
Yep.
You know, they missed that one chance to chase that ball down and put it into touch, in the dead ball line or whatever it be. And, you know, he said it's that young kid who's 19 that scored that try has probably done that 50 times and it never worked for him. But it was that 51st time he did it.
Yep.
And he's now a living icon in that club's history. And, you know, he said he's seen the Smiths, the Cronks, the Slaters, the Thurstons. There's so many times they would have done that, and us three here wouldn't have noticed it.
Exactly.
But they were still there, and they did it that one time where we did notice it, and they're champions.
Yeah.
But it just he reads a game so differently and takes something out of it, and then he, like I said, he sent me that the other day, and I just sat there and I just went, you know what, he's so right, this bugger.
It's all those 1%.
And Josh Adokar is the fastest man on the planet.
So, during this season, you stayed back in New Zealand. You didn't join the side when they came out here. Will you be joining the team in January when they come and doing the 3-month blocks with the team?
Correct. The reason I couldn't go this year, well, as you know, I was in Newcastle, and then I came back because no one knew what this COVID thing was going to happen, you know. So my job was to get back with the staff here, the sponsors, the fans and members, and hold on to the steering wheel as tight as I could.
Yep.
And the other then challenge was that even if I was in Australia, I couldn't have been with the team because you're only allowed, I think it was 30, I think it was all up 47 people. And that was all of our players, all of our staff. So the reality is some of our staff couldn't even go to games because you're only allowed X amount of people at the games and so on. So, you know, I probably got to see more of things from here than what I would have been able to over there. And anyway, in hindsight, it was the best thing because I had to be here anyway. And but I will be definitely going with the team if and when we go to Australia for an indefinite period.
Good stuff.
Outstanding.
Good to have you, mate. It will be good to have you. Mate, we're going to let you go because, as I said, I know it's nearly 10 o'clock there in New Zealand. Mate, we appreciate how, you know, candid you've been with your answers and just giving us the time. I don't think there's another club in the NRL who has a CEO that would come on a show where two gibberers just want to chat to him about, you know, the club that they love and the season next year. So we really do appreciate it. I know we've had a lot of people commenting, saying how pretty awesome it is that you've been able to, you know, come here and just chat to us tonight.
Boys, mate, the one thing I know about this club is we can do whatever we want to do internally, but it's the power of the support we have externally. And when I say external, outside of the, you know, the day-to-day club here, and you guys and all your fans in Australia, like, mate, I just love when I go to Australia and we have a few beers before we go to the game at the local pub down the road, and Robbo, our owner. Yep. We want to develop a hard-working, fun-loving club, and we know that'll create winning. And I know with Brownie and the club and the way it's going now are working their arse off because they want to make you guys so happy and proud, because I know when we do that, mate, we're going to go walkabout for a month, aren't we? Drinking when we win the
no? At least a month.
Start in Sydney and end up at Redcliffe.
Yeah, that's it, mate. Yeah.
But no, we're very proud of you guys and everyone, even Richard, you know, as fans. So you're all a huge part of our club, and mate, I see you as brothers of our club, and so do our players. You know, I think the engagement that you guys have with our players is amazing. Like I think everyone's connected with it. So let's keep it up. Whatever happens this year, watch your space in the next 24 hours, and you can say, that's what he meant.
Mate, we'll reach out to you in the new year during the pre-season through January, and maybe get you back on again January, February, and you can tell us how things are tracking.
I can be your roving supporter within the bubble, mate. How's that?
Ooh,
Mate,
you're
done.
You're on.
We might even do it from. We can even do it from. Sideline roving reporter.
Oh, mate, if you can get me access to the sideline, I'd love that.
Yeah.
We never know. Never know. Righto, boys. Anytime.
Exciting.
Great talking to you.
You too, mate.
Care, eh?
Thanks,
And have
Cam. We
a
appreciate
good Chrissy. Have a
You
good Christmas
too.
and
Yeah,
safe one.
Chrissy, mate. I'll send you our addresses so you can send us some gear. We're quite happy to try stuff out for you and let you know how it goes.
Righto, mate.
review, test drive, anything.
Righto, mate. Send me the addresses. Righto, boys.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks, Cameron.
Appreciate
Appreciate the time. Thank you. Wow,
There
what
you
a
go, mate.
what a chat.
What a chat.
What a chat. Yeah.
We keep saying off camera when we're chatting amongst ourselves how, gee, that was an awesome chat. I don't think you can get much better than that. But, mate, we were able to get the CEO of our club to come on at a time that's, really not comfortable, 8:30 back home.
8:30, yeah.
And sit here and not shy away from any of the questions we asked. Was so candid and, told us a lot of things that we didn't know that were going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, definitely. Unprecedented level of insight, isn't it?
Yeah, mate. Yeah.
And with you being roving sideline reporter next year, mate, it's going to keep going up to a new level here. So, yeah.
No, that was awesome. I'm sorry if I didn't get to ask everyone's questions. There's a couple of questions there that I didn't really want to ask in regards to, like, Matt Lodge was coming up quite a bit, but I mean, it's been in the media. We're not signing Matt Lodge. Malcolm Earnshaw, Roo Hammer about to cry. Great chat with Cam. Nice show, guys. Send all of us gears. You've got my address right, Hammer. I do have your address, Rich. I've been to your house. I know exactly where to send the gear. You just have to give me your size because I'm a double XL. You're a bit bigger than me. I think you're a 3XL, mate. Yeah, that was good. That was a good chat.
Yeah. Oh, that was unreal. Yeah.
Very insightful. Learned a lot about our club from the man that, at the helm of our club.
Yeah, it was great to hear about the recruitment, talking about getting the players there, getting the families involved and doing the chat and everything like that. Yeah, I've always kind of wondered how that sort of goes down.
Yeah, we were, when Rich and I and Josh, Pete and Jace were up in Newcastle for round one, and we kind of asked him about the recruitment side of things and how they go. And that story about the cold, wet Auckland weather and, getting bashed on the field, that was something that he told to us. And I was really wanting him to share that with people because we get criticised a lot about our recruitment and how we missed out on getting some of these players. But a lot of it is not, it's the Warriors, they're shit. I mean, it's all about, you got to relocate your family to another country.
Yeah, if you've got kids and everything like that, it's a big task. Yeah.
Absolutely. Love the insights. Always great to listen to Cameron. Even more excited about 21. Let's go. I agree, Rich. I agree. Yeah. So next week, we're going to chat a little bit about, next week will be our last show, by the way, for the year. And then we're going to chat about, we're going to review the women's women's season, 4 games that the women played. And then we're going to chat about our off-season purchases leading into 2021 and talk about the 2021 draw, bearing in mind that, it's got listed as games in New Zealand, but, at this stage, based on what Cameron was saying, it looks
exactly. From the man himself, it's probably a bit unlikely. Yeah. And don't forget, we got this baby to give away next week.
Yep.
The old Stacey Jones shirt from our friends at O'Kayland. So there we go. Fantastic. Little general in all his glory there. So make sure
we're going to ask a trivia question, are we not?
We are. So this is going to separate the real fans from the pretend fans. So those of you who know your Warriors history very well should have no problems with this. So we're going to be asking a question during the show next week. So you have to tune in next week, and we'll let you know what that question is. and it will be a case of whoever gets in first will win that fantastic T-shirt. Size large, by the way, if anyone's wondering. And we'll get that away to the lucky winner.
Sin and John have just said, any chance of interviewing players, partners and wives to get their insight if they were willing? Would be awesome to get their perspectives. Size large for my Jersey boys.
Yeah, me too. I'm a large as well.
That's a great point.
Good
So
suggestion.
the way that we go about getting the people on the show without giving too much away is I just badger the shit out of them on social media platforms. No, I pretty much introduce myself. A lot of people, as Cameron was saying, are aware of what we're doing now and are quite happy to come on. Reaching out, I reach out to players directly, just send them a message and, they respond. Reaching out to players, partners and wives, I personally wouldn't feel comfortable with, but
yeah,
pretty much like once we get a player and talk to a player, I'm pretty sure that, if we say to them, look, maybe we can get your partner involved in the conversation and ask them a couple of questions. I'm pretty sure that's one way we could go about it.
Yeah, the conversation can go from there, I suppose. Yeah.
Send us a signed shirt, please, mate. Happy to pay. I'd love a signed shirt too.
I can sign a shirt for you.
Yeah, I've got two. I've got this signed shirt or jersey, which I've just accumulated signatures over the space of about 5 years. I think that one is. And then this one here is the signed jersey from this season's Women's Warriors team. I got them to sign a jersey for me as I was their number one supporter. And the only other thing I've got is I've got Lockie Burr's training shirt from this season. But aside from that, and I've got a signed New Zealand Test jersey from Ben Madalino. But aside from that, I don't have any signed gears. So I would love to have some signed gears too.
I thought he was asking for a signed Roo Hammer jersey.
Maybe he is.
Yeah.
Well, we're in the process of sorting out some merch. So once we get some merch,
to quote Cameron, watch this space.
Watch this space. We'll have something pretty soon, I hope. So they are hard to come by, especially with all the COVID shit. Yeah, this year they were very hard to come by. I was at the last game of the season, and I copped. What did I get? I was at where the players were coming out of the dressing room onto the bus, and by the time the players got to me, none of them had any of their playing gear left. I got a pair of socks and I got Lockie's shirt, and that was pretty much it. Everyone else had given all their stuff away, and I don't know how, because between the dressing room and me at the bus, there was probably 4 people.
You missed out on Toddy Payten's gear, didn't you? You just missed out on Toddy Payten's. Yeah.
But you know what? I reckon Cam will come through for us, mate. I reckon Cam will come through.
Well, Monday we get to feast their eyes on the full range, I think he was saying. So for all you Jersey fans out there, get excited.
And for all the Aussie-based fans, regardless of what happens next year, we've got the Aussie membership package that the club has released, which is $35. Get involved. I've already purchased my memberships for next year. I'd buy a Roo Hammer cap. I'd buy a Roo Hammer cap too.
So would I. Who wouldn't?
Malcolm Earnshaw. Yeah,
Snapback.
So support the club. Get involved. Get your memberships ready for next season. I'm sure that for us Aussie-based fans, especially, it'll be business as usual with game day experiences and being able to get the cheaper tickets before tickets go on sale to the general public.
Merchandise discount and members only correspondences, that kind of thing. Yeah.
For our New Zealand-based followers, I would, as Cameron was saying, they're going to probably release something a little bit later. They've got the $25 membership at the moment, which you by all means, I'd encourage everyone to support. Put your money into the club that we all love. But obviously, once some COVID stuff is worked out for New Zealand-based fans, and we get some games back at home at Mount Smart Stadium, I'm sure there'll be some membership packages released at that time.
Yep, absolutely.
All right,
Again,
mate. Well,
watch this space. Yeah, great chat again, mate.
yeah, mate. So next week, I think we'll be on at a reasonable time. We won't be so early. I think we'll go the 7 o'clock you, 8 o'clock me time slot.
That's right. Yeah, 7 p.m. Queensland, 8 o'clock New South Wales.
Yep.
Yep.
We'll do the review of the women's. We'll talk about the next season and the buys and what have you. I do apologise that I haven't, that I don't pay particular attention to the comments coming through at the time that you guys are putting them up when we've got guests, because I'm pretty much engrossed in what's happening with the guest. But by all means, next week, I'll have the screen running up here.
Yeah.
You guys can, chat in and discuss with us the 2021 season, the draw, the purchases that we've made, the club's made. We'll be able to talk about the merchandise because that'll be released.
Yeah.
So we'll be able to have a chat about that. May even see if Charlie could.
Yeah, we'll see if the Jersey King himself, Charlie, will be interested in coming on and talking about his favourite and my favourite subject, so all things Jersey. So we'll see what we can organise there.
Yeah, but it will be our final show for the year, and we will give away the O'Kalan shirt. So please, everyone, tune in. Thank you all for tuning in tonight and watching us with Cam. Really appreciate Cameron coming on and having a chat.
Always appreciate the time that our special guests give us, and you guys that are watching and commenting, and we can't do it without you. So thank you very much, as always.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, mate. Until next week.
Cool, mate. You have a good one, eh?
You too. Have a great weekend, and I'll chat to you soon.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Cheers.
everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.